Howdy up, you delicious people! I'm here to interview The Echo, a movie that gives us a character known as Bobby who is to have been a prisoner that had recently been paroled by the system. And Bobby is to go on and make his way to his parole officer, and we come to find out that Bobby is to be left a room or a place via his dead mother to live within for somehow, I don't know how exactly the rent was to have consistently occurred. I guess miraculously, the rent was to have been paid by the time that Bobby was to have gotten released, and his mother was to have passed away around similar time period. But anyways, too much conveniency, I guess. I don't know. But either way, maybe life insurance kicked in. They didn't explain that at some point in the movie. They should have. But anyways, Bobby goes on and makes his way to his prior dead mother's uh, place and comes to find out that a neighbor of his is just consistently having a domestic disturbance going on and having Bobby hear every yell and blow by blow, and Bobby is to just consistently be having even people knock on his door. He opens the door, there's no one there. Bobby goes on to try and get back to a day-to-day existence by being a mechanic and trying to eventually even have a girlfriend. But it seems that Bobby, the further and further he's trying to get back to the day-to-day, he's going out of his way to find these visions or spirits, these things that it seems that only he can see. And he is just consistently just be driven crazy because of this, to the point of Bobby turning to his love, who is Alyssa, and telling her, yeah, I think I'm going as crazy as my mother did before she died, and I don't know what's going on. So, Bobby goes on to further have this domestic disturbance get to an escalation of Bobby going on and speaking to his manager of said complex, and the manager goes on and says that the walls are too thick, that he shouldn't be able to hear anything, that the manager of this place has no real knowledge of prior things going on into it because he had just recently uh, moved into this place and become the manager. Bobby has to go on and find a nosy neighbor and poke his head into this guy's door and ask him about the history of his said neighbor, and come to find how everything was to have gone on and played out by the later half of this film, because Bobby is just so much consumed by hearing the racket of his neighbors to not do much of any lick about it, or when he does try and act by knocking on doors or what have you, it is convenient that the spirits just do not come to the door at convenient times, because that would go on and wreck up the domestic disturbance loop of things. But so, as Bobby is to go on and make his way to this nosy neighbor, to realize that all these people needed to do was just act, and this all would have stopped, we would go on to have Bobby, who's to realize that since he had gone on and done that talking, by the end of the film, he needs to do that walking. So, we will go on by the end of the film and see if Bobby is to go on and seemingly figure out a way to resolve this endless loop of domestic disturbance that is just seemingly going on through ghosts that we will find. Because even when Bobby's to go on and make his way into that said apartment, he will not find a stitch of furniture within that room, within that place, within that apartment location. We will also come to find that Bobby will not be the lone person to have been affected by this domestic disturbance. We will come to find that Bobby will also have a neighbor that is on that floor that will also be hearing things going on and eventually himself be infected by the spirits that are eventually going and haunting his place. We will also go on to find that both Hector, Bobby's boss, because Bobby will become a mechanic in this film, will also go on to make his way, Hector, to Bobby's place to apologize and otherwise find out that, yeah, he really should be sorry that he ever went to Bobby's building because he will regret it for the rest of his life that he will live. Uh, we will also go on and have Alyssa. Alyssa will go on to reconnect with Bobby because they are to seemingly be past friends, lovers, not quite sure, but otherwise, Alyssa will go on and be the only person left for Bobby to have any real backstory or anything of, which Alyssa goes on to explain why Bobby had went to prison. And so Alyssa will also go on and be haunted uh, by Bobby's neighbors. Mostly, the people who it seems is haunting are to be both the child and both the mother are to seemingly keep appearing and either killing people or just consistently appearing to scare people. But this movie is very tame on its ability to honestly scare anybody, as well as also reasonably there is like a little bit of chopping of fingers or whatever going on in this film. It's kind of, but to me, like this movie is just very tame because there's not really much going on in existence of this movie that's really happening. Um, this movie is to go on and just kind of be a film that really disappointed me. And I was going on and thinking that this movie could have been like the Peter O'Toole, Steve Guttenberg, Liam Neeson high spirits kind of film, or it could have been something like the Topher Grace Delirium movie, or it could have been like The Grudge in some capacities. But yeah, it ended up not being quite much of any one of those in most ways. But it was quasi similar in in very few. So without further ado, I think it's about that time to go on and say that it is about that time to whip out my cast list, or whatever I insisted to go on and be a thing of me, rattling off the entire film, scene for scene, blow by blow. You know, the way in which I will like to go about this, regardless of realizing how long this video goes. But lastly, I will go on and say that where can you go on and see this movie, regardless of my own opinion upon it, because you want to get your own and you want to watch this movie for absolutely free instead of going through a number of apps to try and see if you have a need for a subscription of any number of these things or whichever. I will go on and say that there is an app through a mobile use if you have a Google Play store called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, and you can see the Echo for absolutely free. Uh, Other than that, yeah, like I think it's about that time to just push into spoilers because at the end of the day, yeah, this movie was, in all honesty, just I really don't want to say bad, but I think that's the only thing that I could really just like. It's either bad or it's boring, and either one of them are to just be a negative. Sadly enough, like this movie just kind of gets very repetitive with the like Bobby is just consistently hearing his neighbors, and it's just to really be a movie that it's like at the very ending they just recycle some scenes from the third act to just reuse to give us an ending outside of like the way that they really were to end the film, which was to kind of resolve things the way they do. Uh, which I guess that probably should have been the ending, but they just added other things to just. Was there a runtime issue? What was going on in this film? I'm very curious. Uh, we also get like a scenery shot at the very beginning of the film and a scenery shot at the end of the film. We also get this credit roll that I think goes way too long in the beginning of the movie also that gives us this audio that I was like, what the heck is going on here? Am I missing something in the film? Like, why are we hearing this audio that we're eventually going to just hear at some point through a good chunk of the film frickin' anyways? Like, how about you've got to go on and give me like something to uh like not have to hear when I'm going to hear a lot of it later. Um, but I guess they can go on and probably right out of the gate give me something to expect for this movie. Yeah, just like that was to just be one of the things I was like, why make that choice? I don't know. There could have been a number of things of how you could really have opened this film and made it a heck of a lot better. At least, really than me questioning like, is there something wrong with this film? Like, is the audio off? Like, I was so confused. But anyways, so let's get on with the breakdown because I'm gonna break down my way out of here. Future reviews. There's a handful of horror films that I will go on and do in the future because of time of year. Hopefully I will go on and find some hidden gems, or I'll go on and just find a bunch of films that I regret watching once. Who knows? Uh, there is a number of things here that I ain't seen through one IMDb list, so I will go on and kind of state them here that I hope to watch them in the future. There's a Del Toro movie that I saw that was Are You Afraid of the Dark that has like Katie Holmes in it. There could be something interesting there, or it could just be something that I am just like, okay, whatever this was. Uh, I kind of saw the trailer of it, and there was like not a lot that was to go on and kind of help me understand what was really going on in the film. So I'm gonna just go into that movie pretty much blind freaking anyways. There's a movie called Curtains that I kind of saw the trailer of, and I was like, okay, that doesn't really tell me much about the film. But I keep thinking that there's maybe going to be something visually interesting in this film, but I'm not quite sure. So Curtain or Curtains, either way, it'll probably be Curtains for that film. Uh, because I'll do it and I'll just be done with it. Uh, I'll go on to eventually check out this movie called The Cave. Could be something interesting. It looked like there's a barrage of just kind of interesting things that are to be maybe done in this cave movie. Uh, I've gone on to see some kind of people going into caves lately and just kind of doing that kind of stuff. So kind of like, okay, it kind of reminds me of that. There was also to go on to be a movie called The Loneliest Way to Die that has a bunch of rock climbers who are making their way to finding a girl that is buried alive. Could be interesting. There's this movie called Open Grave where we find this rando person who had been thrown into this big, massive grave full of all these dead bodies. He seemed to be the only one still alive. He walks his way to find all these other people that seem to have no memory of who they are. So he doesn't know if he's the killer or if any of these other people are the killer. They are to all try to figure things out and hope that they come up with some kind of answers by the end of this. I don't know. It just looked randomly interesting um, to come up with this kind of idea or concept. There was this movie I saw called Haunter that has this girl going through this time loop, and there's a guy that seems to be consistently killing her. So that seemed similar to a movie called Happy Death Day, so I'm kind of looking into that because of that. Plus, also, I like time loop movies if they have an interesting thing with it. Um, but yeah, we'll see about that. So otherwise, instead of going on and keep rattling off all these movie titles, and I'm sure will probably be a thing that I'll probably heavily review somewhere down the road of these days, and maybe regret every one of them. Uh, Either way, I'm to say that hey, at least I'm just consistently taking these chances and seeing where it heads me. With that said, I think it's about that time to head into full-on breakdown, spoilers, and what have you. It is spoiler time, so it's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is your favorite horror film, because maybe I will review it at some point in the future. Who knows? Maybe if you comment, I'll actually go on and reply to it, because I probably will, because for how very rarely it does actually happen on this channel. But either way, thank you for going on and watching this video and taking the time out of your day to go out of my way, of or out to my way to see this video because I do appreciate it. And I'm really very much honest about that. Even though people were like, "Yeah, you need the views," you blah blah blah. Yeah, I do need those things, but I also need people um, that do care about these projects. I really do. But either way, hey, if you just come in here randomly, also, then that's fine. Thank you for doing so. So, let's go into full-on breakdown spoilers. I'm going to pause this here, whip on my cast list of Roy Insist to help me rattle off this entire film, frame for frame, scene for scene. You know what I mean? Jelly Bean. Let's get into this. Let's pause here. Alright, so spoiler time, everybody. The very beginning of this has a scenery shot of the city because we always have that bullshit when it comes down to movies. I don't know what it is. Why is it in movies when it's the very like we have to have the like, hey, let's show you a picture of the city he's in. Cause what does that matter? Why do movies always love to do this? I just don't get this at this point. Like, this city has no bearing on what's going on in the like it's very severely rare cases where the city like yeah it like has anything to do like unless it's a zombie invasion uh or like it has to be just kind of like an atmospheric movie where like yeah like a zombie thing or uh like it's a dystopian yeah like that could go on and probably much more have more weight of bearing of but yeah like we have a horror film and like the movie begins with just um a random bit of shots of just people doing in the town. I'm like why does this have to occur? But anyways, so we have Bobby going on and meeting with his parole officer who ends up going on and being uh a character just only known as Lucille. Lucille goes on and is to mention to Bobby that it seems that there is only to be uh, people basically working with sanitary or working with toilets or whatever. That's the only job that's really available right now for a guy of specifically his ilk of going on and to of course been in prison for and him possibly getting a job. We have Bobby that is really not interested in sanitation. He was asking for like a transportation job, and that seems to be not available. And Bobby used to go on and say that he has a job skill of being a mechanic, and it seems that Lucille is having a tough time trying to find any jobs for Bobby, but eventually Bobby will go on and find one himself. So Lucille goes on and tells Bobby, hey, where are you going on? Where are you living? Because, of course, the way that your parole is, you're going to be in a very tight leash. So, if anything, like you're going to have to go on and make your way back here to just kind of have consistent contact and call and so on and so forth. So Bobby goes on and mentions that he will go on and make his way to his mother's place, and his mother who will have passed away. And Lucille goes on and asks, like, well, hey, like, do you have seemingly any other family members? And Bobby goes, no. And so it's like, okay, so that's to be like the only kind of real thing coming out of this. So Lucille goes on to also tell Bobby if he misses one meeting, like he'll go right back to jail. So like he has to be very strict about doing doing these meetings, regardless of what is to be on his schedule. So Bobby goes on and makes his way walking through town to find the apartment complex to make his way to knock on the manager's door and say that he's Helen Reynolds' son, and that they've kind of explained things and uh, given him a message and so on and so forth. So the manager goes on and tells him that he'll be living in room 915. That at some point they had gone on to need to have broken in to his mother's place when she did die, but he won't go on and he won't charge him for that. So it's like, well, it's a good thing that he won't. So Bobby goes on into the elevator and he meets this woman who it seems is to be muttering something. And whenever Bobby's to go on to be asking her any question like going up, are you going to the lobby? She never responds. So Bobby goes on to just like, okay, whatever, like, maybe this woman is just old. Bobby weirdly just has to just consistently just be looking everywhere. Uh, like this man is to be just so overly curious, or I guess he just needs to do in this movie because there's nothing really going on in this film. So Bobby goes on to himself find the trash chute, and this trash chute looks very like very old and very just like really bad looking. We'll come to find out that the garbage chute will also go on and lead to a scare in the later part of the film. We'll get to that at some point. So Bobby comes to find a girl outside uh of this neighbor home of his that's 517 that is to be the haunted one. And so Bobby goes on and sees this girl kind of sitting down playing this piano. And Bobby makes his way into his place, starts looking around. The first thing he sees is his mother's photo. He goes on and kind of cleans the photo and he kisses it. We then have Bobby who's to kind of thumb through the music. I think he looks through at the record player and then is to thumb through some of the cassette tapes. We have Bobby that makes his way into his mother's room. He goes on to find some pictures of, I would assume, him and his mother. Uh, Bobby goes on and finds his mother's necklace. And he also goes on to find his mother's pillow with blood on it. Bobby will eventually go on and take said pillow and try to clean it. Bobby makes his way to the couch and is to put his hand in his head and just be like, the grieving of which they have to do now. Oh, the horrors of all of that. So Bobby goes on to play a record. Bobby. Dang it, Bobby! I should have done that so much sooner, but I didn't. Oh well. King of the Hill fans out there, anybody? So Bobby decides to go on and he opens up his piano to come to find that there's oddly blood on some of the keys. After Bobby goes on and takes a napkin of sort or a handkerchief of sorts to clean up these keys, he'll go on to find out that there's just consistently blood on this piano and there's nothing he can really do. So that sucks, right? So, because even when Bobby does clean the blood off the keys, he will come to find that there's still blood on the keys. And so Bobby goes on and starts strumming the piano and could probably connect the girl who is playing her little piano and his, and just like, like maybe there's something connected there. So, speaking of connected, uh, Bobby goes on and finds that he is connected with this weird kind of crack in this wall. We have at one point where Bobby's to stick his finger into this hole and then realizes he cuts his finger, making his way to the bathroom to then open up this medicine cabinet to try to see if he can put a band-aid or some kind of something on his finger. And he goes on to find that his mother was on some medication of some sorts, which I don't know because really logically I could not be bothered to really read any of the medication because I was to just be too busy not giving a fuck. Anyways, uh, Bobby goes on to continue to make his way through his apartment and to look out um, at the hallway of said place, a floor that he was on. And Bobby goes back to playing some records and noticing out the window that there is to be one neighbor that consistently is to be of a shadowy figure that could be probably very nosy or peeping in on Bobby. And we would go on to have Bobby, who was to kind of shirk the curtains. Uh, so Bobby goes on and makes his way to this restaurant. How exactly he goes on and has the ability to pay for seemingly anything is beyond me, because either this guy must be somehow how does he have money? Like, does he have a bacon account that still is to be active? Like, I'm not quite sure how that exactly all plays out the way it does, but anyways. Here is where Bobby meets up with Alyssa, who is to be one of the waitresses at this establishment. It seems that it seems that Allison doesn't quite recognize Bobby right away, but eventually, when the further and further they talk, Alyssa's like, "Oh yeah." So Bobby goes on and sits at the counter, and one of the waitresses goes on and tells him like, "I'll be right there with you." And so Bobby turns and starts talking to Alyssa, like, "Well, listen, hey." And Alyssa's like, "Oh." Um, so Bobby goes on and says hi. And so Alyssa's like, "Well, when did you get back?" "A couple of days ago." Um, "Are you here for good?" "I hope so." Uh, Alyssa goes on and says, "Well, I'm sorry about your mom. I heard what happened." Uh, they go on and there's like a suggestion that maybe they're gonna have a cup of coffee again later. But Alyssa goes on and consistently says like, "Well, I have finals. Well, I'm busy. I just have a lot going on right now. Like just right now, I just don't think I'll have time to just meet up with anybody." But Bobby has nobody and no one, even to the point to where Bobby goes on and tries to call an old friend of his and tries to ask if he can get a forwarding phone number, and the guy hangs up on him. Nobody wants anything to do with Bobby except for maybe Alyssa. So that's really just sad. Uh, but Bobby is to try to figure out some way that he can just have some time to just meet up with Alyssa. It's like, well, hey, maybe the weekend. And Alyssa's like, well, hey, I'm working doubles and I'm doing school and I just have zero free time. So Bobby just tells Alyssa, like, well, hey, well, at least it's good to see you. So Bobby makes his way back to his apartment, and Bobby is seemingly going on and having some kind of dream of sorts, where he ends up turning and a person grabs him, and the person comes ever so close to Bobby's face and says, "Help me." I believe that this is actually to go on and be the spirit or the dream sequence of Bobby's mother. Bobby goes on and says at some time that he is to feel his mother's presence within the room, but also that could just be chalked up as the other ghosts that are just haunting that area, and it's to not actually be Bobby's mother, it's to actually be the mother or the daughter that is to be living neighborly to him. But so this help me ghost appearing in Bobby's dream is to, of course, wake him up. And so the next thing we see here is Bobby trying to make it back to the day to day life of working at a job. Bobby goes on and finds this repair shop and finds a guy named Hector. Or Bobby goes on and asks Hector if he can get a job there. And Hector's like, well, hey, like if it seems that you have the skill, like I think I may go on and find use for you, but hey, because of your record, and it's like, well, yeah, like no one wants to really hire a guy like Bobby, um, for him to have done involuntary manslaughter. But so Hector is seemingly willing to give Bobby a chance, even though he tells him it's like, well, hey, the pay isn't going to be high. And Bobby's like, well, I don't really need much. Uh, he just needs a chance. And if anything, also, I'm sure he just needs to build some kind of equity. So if he probably tries to look for another job, at least he'll have this reference. Or maybe not, because Hector will end up being dead in this film. So what reference could he really give to a guy like Bobby? Anyways, so but I really like Hector in this film. Hector is a guy that's like, well, hey, like if I hire you, like you need to be straight up with me. Like Hector, it seems, really wants to hire people he can trust. And when things start to go sideways in his shop, it seems that he only has one person to blame, and that is to really just be the new person, because everyone else that has ever gone on to work with him has worked with him for a very long time, and he feels that he has had loyalty with everyone else. And so really like when things start to hit the fan, he really just goes on and it's immediately just think like, oh well, new guy's got to be the problem. But anyways, so we have Bobby that makes his way to his manager of this complex, because when Bobby was investigating that crack or that hole ended up cutting his finger, it seemed that he had thought that he had heard some plumbing issues, that the plumbing was rusty or something. So Bobby is going on to his manager to, of course, complain about this. And as Bobby's to go on and give a good knock at the door, we have him to be met by a guy who I believe is just called Old Man. Yeah, I guess that's all they got for him in this movie. He's known as Old Man, But eventually, this old man will eventually be seen again to reveal the backstory of the ghostly characters. So Bobby goes on and talks to this old man, and he is playing chess. He tells him that, hey, it's supper time. Like, he probably won't answer because he's too focused on his food instead of your problems. So Bobby goes on and talks about how he's having some plumbing problems and he's starting to hear noises in the wall. So it seems that there's nothing that Bobby can do right now but to just make his way back to his room or his place. I don't know what to call it, a room or a place, because I don't know much about apartment things. Uh, anyways, so I'm just gonna keep saying place. I think that probably makes more sense. I say room because, like, anyways, um, because I'm always thinking of like more of a house than an apartment complex. Anyways, so Bobby makes his way back to his place, uh, within his floor. I keep, and when he goes to the elevator, a man in a police uniform is to appear next to him. We'll come to find out that that character is to actually be Walter, the the man that keeps going on and making a bit of racket right next door to him because he is to be a ghost. Bobby will have this policeman consistently going on and following him and further like as they walk. It just seems very uncomfortable how close the two of them are getting. And the cop goes on and like takes off his hat, like looks at him like and Bobby used to just kind of have these awkward moments of like, is he looking at me? Like, and then he opens the door and closes it, and he's like, great, like a cop living next door. Um, this is gonna be great because he just got off of prison, so he's just like, man, if I make any little noise or any little anything, like I'm sure this cop will be itching to just throw me back in jail for something. So here's where Bobby goes on and calls his old friend, uh, to get a forwarding number to that old friend, and then that goes nowhere. That goes dead. Bobby goes back to the crack in the wall, and then is to weirdly start crawling around his apartment because he just hears things. We go back to the piano, there's blood on the keys, and Bobby will notice that there is one key, bizarrely, that is stuck. Bobby opens up the piano to come to find that there is seemingly uh, a bit of paper towel that has weirdly a lot of nails that have been ripped off somebody's fingers. And it's like, okay, that is creepy. But then again, we'll go on and later find Alyssa trying to get away from this ghost or trying to attach herself to this wall somehow by gripping onto it and ripping some of her nails off. Ugh, that was pretty gross. But so we go on to have Bobby, who opens up this paper towel of thing or this napkin of things of sorts, and we find these nails. Bobby goes on to make his way to this manager to confront him about this weird assortment of nails and paper towel of things, and is to go on and ask the manager about that. And the manager goes on and says, "Well, that's probably because of your your mother's stuff. Probably, I don't know, like so." We also have the manager that goes on to state, uh, "You shouldn't hear this from me, but the neighbors heard from the police. Your mother locked herself in the apartment for weeks, and it's like, well, hey, you have any reason for why she would go on and do such a thing? And because the manager's like, well, yeah, I didn't start here till afterwards. Because yeah, like, did this manager honestly just start working here like yesterday? like when Bobby actually arrived here, was like that his like first day moving in, or like, what is the story with this guy? Like, it seems that he, like, the manager just wants to go on and be oblivious about every single thing. Like, he's probably lived here forever. He's probably lived here for years. But every day is to be like, hey, this is a brand new day for me. Uh, and so the manager goes on and says to Bobby that he never met her. But he knew about, like, the circumstances of her getting hauled away from the apartment. So at least he knew that. He definitely knew that. Uh, and the manager goes on and says, but when they found her, she was in a real bad shape. No shit. Was she going to be in amazing shape? Was she going to be in her prime? If she was going to end up dead, I'm sure she was probably look really rough. um, but it's kind of funny. The manager goes on and asks, like, well, hey, was there anybody to go on and actually check in on her? And Bobby was like, no, she didn't have anybody. She didn't have any other family. I'm her only family. And then I was in prison, so yeah, that was going to work out. We have Bobby that goes on and asks the manager, it's like, well, do you think any of the other neighbors that live here has any information about either my mother or anything that's kind of going on in this building? And the manager goes on like, well, probably, but they don't want to freaking talk to you because, of course, knowing that this guy just went to prison. So, uh, so if anything, it's left as like, well, she was sick, she was real sick, and so Bobby goes on and states like, well, hey, you need to go on and you need to check on those noises that keep happening, because Bobby can always hear his neighbors and he can hear them through the walls. And the manager goes on and says, well, this building is to kind of be pre-war, whatever that means, and that the walls are very thick, and there's no way he should be able to hear his neighbors, because of course, any excuse to go on and there's no sound bullshit. Like, is there any other thing that this guy doesn't have to fix? Yeah, like there's horrible plumbing. I can hear it all the time. Oh no, the plumbing is fine. The plumbing is the best that it's ever been. I just replaced the plumbing like 2 days ago. I wasn't here when it happened because I just moved in here yesterday, but it was fixed. that's the like that's almost kind of like the running joke of this film. So then the manager goes on and tells Bobby, it's like, yeah, you seem to be the only one that's hearing things. But then again, like the guy that is to also be living on Bobby's floor, he'll be hearing the exact same things. And the neighbor will go on and even ask Bobby, it's like, well, hey, do you hear him too, right? And like, oh yeah, like minded. So yeah, Bobby will not be the only one hearing things. So but here is where Bobby is going to be hearing things. We'll go on here from, of course, Bobby's lovely neighbors. Uh, what am I? Am I seeing things? Uh, why do you keep lying to me all the time? Uh, what? I go to work all day. No. Just stop. Just stop. Who is this guy? Well, you're acting like what? Like what am I? What am I, chop liver? No, no, no. I didn't say that. So this is all going on, and then Bobby's just hearing it through the wall, and I wasn't doing anything. Are you all right in there? That's what he says. Are you all right? Because you can hear the shouting through the wall. So Bobby finally chimes in with like, "Are you all right in there?" So Bobby makes his way to his work, and Hector goes on and starts him out with the common things to just kind of test his knowledge. Like, hey, I'll start you off with a tune-up, and we'll see where it goes from there. Uh, and that also he will bring in some cars to park them. Hector doesn't want any of his cars to go missing, and as soon as they do, guess who's going to get blamed for it? So Bobby starts chiming in with Hector, like, hey, do you hear those voices? And do you hear those sounds? And Hector's like, well, hey, it's the valve grinder over there. And we all of a sudden have Bobby who starts to see this shadowy figure from the distance, who I believe is probably the child, who is probably crying. We have Hector that is continuously telling Bobby about the Dropbox, and there have been some cars that have gotten carjacked in the past at the shop, and that he can't risk any kind of other losses happening at his shop. So we have Hector again that is to be asking Bobby, hey, like, are you paying any attention to what I'm saying to you? And Bobby's like, yeah. But when the hood of the car ends up getting shoved down, we end up seeing the spirit that vanishes. So Bobby goes on and is to finally bump into Alyssa, and the two of them are sharing some coffee. It seems that Bobby's to seemingly know what Allison or Alyssa is to have had for a coffee drink, and it seems that Alyssa is to not have had that same coffee drink still, and she is to have sweet and low, sadly enough. So Bobby ends up just handing it to her anyway. We're like, hey, you can either drink it or not drink it. So both Bobby and Alyssa start talking about things, and talking if Bobby has called anybody from the neighborhood, and it seems like everybody had moved away, or everyone had just kind of grew up. Uh, Things aren't how they used to be. Uh, and Bobby goes on to tell Alyssa, like, well, yeah, I wished or I hoped that certain things were to go back like how they used to be, because both Alyssa and him were to used to be together. So hopefully that could go on and not change. Alyssa goes on to say, like, well, and I know you have you got questions, and Bobby's like, well, I um had questions for the past few years. Alyssa goes on to state that she was to never have gone on and been uh to Bobby when he was in prison, and Bobby, I think, did that on purpose to just be like, well, no, like, I didn't want you uh, to have me talk about the prison life in there and this and that. So, like, that's the reason why uh, Bobby, of course, had to kind of cut Alyssa off the way he did. From that, uh, we would also go on to. Let me pause here for a second. Alyssa goes on and tells Bobby that well, hey, do you think that you're just going to give me coffee and I'm going to forgive you for all the time that we've missed? And Bobby goes on and tells Alyssa, it's like, well, I was hoping for a second chance out of all this. And Alyssa goes on and says, like, well, hey, maybe. And Bobby's like, well, I'll take maybe. and he says maybe you'll come around the apartment sometime. Alyssa goes on and makes her way to work as Bobby, with some groceries, makes his way to his apartment. He comes to find his neighbor, who is to be Joseph, who is to go on and be at Bobby's door as he's just going on and overhearing things, and asking if Bobby is to go on and hear them too. And so Joseph goes on and asks Bobby about, like, well, hey, you hear them, you hear the woman, um, or you hear the child, like you hear the sounds. Um, we even go on to have Joseph, who's asking Bobby, it's like, well, are all those sounds all coming from you? And Bobby's like, no. Um, so Joseph ends up leaving, and we have Bobby, who's going on to make his way into cleaning his dishes, and is to hear something coming through his sink, and he thinks it's kind of just weird plumbing sounds. Bobby makes his way to toss his garbage through the garbage chute, and at one point it seems that some of his trash starts to fall out. So Bobby goes on and chucks his garbage and makes his way back to his place. We, of course, have the shouting again of the domestic dispute. Do you understand? Do you understand me? Do you understand? I don't understand. You're hurting me. There you go. Don't you ever do that. We have Bobby that pokes his head next to 517 and is hearing the commotion. Don't you ever do that. So on and so forth. And then Bobby, slowly but surely, is to hear a person coming ever so close to the 517 door. So Bobby rushes to get to his door to try and open the door up so that way he can get back into his place. And Bobby pokes his eye into the peephole to find that Walter is to be outside, just kind of looking around, and looking at the door. Bobby then locks his door viciously, or as quietly as he can, just gonna knock, knock, and the cop goes on and makes his way back to his own place. So the next thing we see is Bobby is to be shirtless, and is making his way to his mother's room. Again, pillow has blood on it, Bobby. You gotta clean that. So Bobby goes on and is to try to turn the light on in his mother's closet, and comes to find that the light immediately turns off. Bobby then goes on to find a lamp to turn that on, and then tries to figure out a way for him to see into the closet. There seems to be some kind of weird food residue that seems to be coming from the bottom, or probably all over the goddamn closet. It's freaking gross. So, because there's cans of stuff, there's all kind of assortment of things. It seems that really this woman has been probably living in this closet for who knows how long. Uh, Bobby finds a number of just open canned goods and all kinds of things. Bobby goes on to find, as I've probably said Bobby a million times in this review, uh, he finds that there are some white boxes that he tries to grab. All of a sudden, there seems to be some poor shelving that is going on in this closet because a lot of just starts falling on Bobby. I hope it kills him so that way this movie will end quicker. But it won't. It won't. Bobby will go on to find also that this closet door will also have this weird lock at the bottom of it for reasons I don't understand. But then also Bobby will go on to find this recording, uh, like little handheld recording thing, and Bobby goes on and is to try to play it. There's no sound that comes out of it, so he rewinds it, and he goes on to hear his mother talking, stating that that Bobby's mother is to go on and overhear the sounds, and this tape recorder is to be the proof that she needs that she's just not hearing things, that she's not going crazy, that these sounds are actually to be happening and they're not to be made up by her own brain. So Bobby is overhearing all these sounds, and then eventually it leads to also Bobby hearing a knock at his door, and he goes on to answer it. No one is there. Bobby then goes on and gets his shirt on because he was shirtless through most of that scene. Deliciously shirtless, I'm sure, for a lot of the women out there, or maybe some of the dudes, or maybe a goat. We have Bobby that makes his way down the elevator because he's going to go and do his laundry. His basket that he has his clothes in is to be kind of a wicker basket. Fairly interesting how he made that choice. If anything, I would have much rather have gone with a more plastic one because, man, that wicker basket is probably just me after a while, right? Anyways, so plus like a thing of a basket like that. Anyways, so here's where we go on and we have Bobby who's meeting up with the neighbor again that eventually won't go on and say to him as he goes on and asks, hey, you going to the lobby? She says nothing. Bobby then goes on to make his way to the laundry room of this apartment complex, and Bobby is to discover where exactly his trash is to have gotten dumped as he finds this dumpster. And so he's like, okay, cool. This is a place where my trash and my garbage goes. Great. Wonderful. So Bobby goes on to finally clean his mother's bloody pillowcase. Good for him. He's getting something done with his life. Interestingly enough, Bobby is to go on and have one of these machines start to go cattywampus while he goes on and drops a quarter or some quarters on the ground. We also have Bobby at one point who's just kind of casually looking around, and while he's looking this way, there is to be a person walking down this hallway from this angle of where he's not looking. Horribly. So but Bobby is to continue to just keep investigating while his laundry is being done. And so Bobby is just ever so curious about where his trash ends up getting dumped that he makes his way back to his dumpster. And while Bobby goes on to make his way back to this dumpster location, all of a sudden there seems to be someone who goes on to throw their garbage down this chute and scares Bobby. Bobby pokes his head into the dumpster to see that there's trash there. Wow, trash. So we'll find out that there's more than just trash there later, but we'll get there. So Alyssa goes on and makes her way to Bobby's place. Alyssa will go on and find the little piano girl, and good for her that she finds this girl. Alyssa, it seems, to go on and realize that Bobby's room, or Bobby's place, Bobby's door of his place is to be seemingly open, seemingly ajar. So Alyssa goes on and says, hello, Bobby. Damn it, Bobby. Your door is open. Hello. And so Alyssa decides to go on and make her way into Bobby's place, finding the big hole of crack of just that horrific thing that is beyond Bobby's wall. Heaven forbid. This kind of reminds me of like the CM Punk movie girl on the third floor, because like we have the cracking on the wall, and like it is kind of weird to say because like that also is kind of like a ghost film, but that's probably the only real comparisons here. Because CM Punk has to kind of rebuild this house, it keeps finding more and more problems with it. Whereas this thing is just like, well, like Bobby is finding a lot of problems with uh, his neighbors, and there's nothing he can really do about it. So we have Alyssa that goes on and just kind of waiting to get a little hand that kind of appears over her shoulder, and then a Bobby miraculously appears into the door, and then Alyssa is to turn around like, oh hey yeah, hey, um, like Bobby says, oh you came, like how did you get in? And Alyssa's like, well your door was open, and he's like, oh all right well like so at least she's here. So Alyssa goes on and noses out Bobby's window, the nosy neighbors that keep poking their head out to look at Bobby's place. And so Alyssa asks Bobby about this. It's like, oh yeah, they're just nosy neighbors. And eventually Bobby will go on and investigate these nosy neighbors because he gets annoyed by them being so nosy. So, as if to go on and say, hey, come over to my place, I'll tell you a tale. I'll tell you a story. So but Bobby chalks it up as like, well, hey, considering there's an ex-con in the building, I'm sure that's probably all the more reason for them to be nosy. And so Bobby goes on to state that everything that he's kind of cleaning up recently is to actually all be his mother's. And he doesn't know what to do with it all, but well, like, eventually I'm sure a lot of it is all ugly or whatever. Um, and to be nothing that I'm sure Alyssa will probably want, so that way he can get rid of it. Uh, we have Alyssa that goes on and sees Bobby's mother's picture and says that it looked like she was happy in that picture, but Bobby says, yeah, I think by the time that she had gone on to pass away, she wasn't happy. She was on medication, and it, everything must have just have gotten so bad for her that she just stayed here in the apartment for weeks, it seems. Uh, and supposedly she had gone on to even further starve herself to death. Bobby doesn't know if it was a self death, and nobody does. Uh, he has tried to go into her bedroom, but it's very difficult. It all sounds crazy. Uh, and he also says that he feels her presence, that she could go on possibly still be here. Lisa goes on to tell Bobby that there obviously is some time for him to need to still heal here, and that's obviously what he's doing. Bobby goes on and looks at Alyssa's sketches, telling her that they're amazing, but I'm sure he's lying to her. And Alyssa's like, well, they're rough sketches. And Bobby goes on and asks Alyssa, like, well, hey, you ever wonder what could have happened if I wouldn't have gone on to prison? What could have been? And Alyssa asks Bobby, it's like, well, hey, do you? And Bobby says, every day. Uh, Bobby goes on to state what his prison life was like. It was isolating. Uh, he never really had privacy, but again, it was also very isolating. Uh, Bobby says the only thing that really got him through were the good times, the good things, and eventually we have Alyssa who just needs to leave. The two of them go on and say it was good to see them, and we have Alyssa that goes on to kiss Bobby, and then she goes into the elevator and leaves. Bobby there after that is to go on and probably have a really cold shower because I'm sure he has a whiffy stiffy thinking about Alyssa kissing him. So Bobby goes on and takes his cold shower, and is to be interrupted by a neighbor who is to go on to be knocking on his door. And we of course have Bobby, who is to say to this neighbor, "Hang on," as he's going to go on and make his way um, to help out this neighbor who says, "Please, someone help us." Bobby goes on and makes his way to the door and realizes that it is, I believe it's Gina here, who is also the mother ghost. So Bobby goes on and is to make his way to open the door to see that Gina is opening hers. And so Bobby ends up asking said woman, "You okay, miss? Yeah, you need some help with something? Whatever it is, I'm right next door if you need anything." And then Bobby goes right back to his room, closes the door, and so there is a knock at the door. And when Bobby opens, he notices the big beefy Walter right at his door. God, this guy looks freaking massive. And like, I've gone on to see this actor who plays Walter like play some really big roles, but like, yeah, like he looks huge here. Like, not saying like muscular, but like, come on, he looks very intimidating. Um, Plus, also, I'm sure this guy could break me in half if he really wanted to. But anyways, so Bobby goes on and asks Walter, "Hey, do you need something?" And Walter's like, "Well, yeah, I want you to mind your own business, okay?" Also, like, Bobby is actually looking kind of very intimidating in that tank top. Like all those muscles that are really just popping out. Like, man, just good work on that workout schedule, I guess. Because freaking Bobby looks great in this tank top. Who cares? Anyways, so Alyssa goes on and makes her way with flowers to Bobby's place. And here's where we go on and we have Gina again knocking at Bobby's door. And Alyssa is possibly think that uh, Gina is to be somehow affected by Bobby, uh, or doesn't really get what the situation is. But anyways, so Alyssa makes her way to this. I'm assuming uh, kind of class where they're making all these clothing, and we would go on to have Alyssa that has a friend, I believe, who's named Katie here, and the two of them are talking, and like it seems that Alyssa is to go on and be so distracted that we're not going to quite be sure if she's going to be really focusing on her studies. Uh, Katie goes on and tells Alyssa that senior collections are going up on Friday, and I don't think that Alyssa's going to make the grade here. Uh, because Katie goes on and tells Alyssa, like, "Hey, you haven't even started sewing yet. You haven't even started this project yet." And Alyssa says, like, "Well, I went to just see Bobby." And she had seen a woman sitting at his door and she was crying. I don't know. I suppose he doesn't owe me any explanation or anything. But still, or no, Kitty goes on, "You still have feelings for him." And Alyssa's like, "Well, I don't know." And Alyssa's like, "Maybe. What if I do? What if I'm supposed to do something about it?" Uh, we now have Bobby, and he is to, of course, be in his place, and he is to be overhearing, "Somebody help me! Come here!" Uh, we have Gina, who's in the hallway, and we have Walter that grabs her. Bobby is to kind of overhear things and make his way to the door. We are overhearing, "Run, baby, run." And so Bobby at this point is just a little annoyed at this at this juncture. So he goes on and says, F this. He opens the door. He comes to find a little girl by his doorway. Uh, Bobby goes on and asks the little girl, Are you okay? Because he cares. He gives a about a little girl at his doorway. So we have the parents shouting. So Bobby's like, Hey, like let's get this kid away from all this shouting and get him into this place. He goes on and looks at the girl and notices that she has this little piano. So Bobby's like, Well, hey, would you like to play a real piano? And has him and the girl kind of go over there. Bobby also notices the bruising on the girl. It's like, so Bobby goes on to make his way to the piano, realizes that there's still blood on the keys that he has to clean with his own shirt. And so further and further that he tries to talk to the girl, it seems that he's not getting really any response really. Uh, but as Bobby's to go on and overhear the keys that the girl plays in the piano, and also the keys that he's playing on his own piano, he starts to hear a connection between them. Bobby goes on to realize that there's only one thing left to do as he's going on and consistently hearing both Walter and Gina go at it, that he's going to go on and call the cops finally because he's had enough at this point. So Bobby goes on and calls the cops and is to poke his head out his door. And Bobby yells the words, I can hear you in there. Uh, Open up the door. We have the two officers that specifically have to mention that over the walkie that they're like specific cops that are for a specific case of some kind. It was very weird. They call it domestic officers arrived, or they say domestic officers arrived. I'm like, what does that even mean? That doesn't make any sense. Like they're only there for like domestic disturbances. It makes no sense. So Bobby goes on to explain to the officers that these two people fight a lot, and we also have Bobby that explains to the two officers that this guy that's in there is actually a cop. So the officer goes on and decides to make his way uh, to talk to the people, and the door does open. So they make their way into the place. They come to find out that the entire uh, place that they go into is completely deserted. There's no furniture, no nothing. The two cops go on and tell Bobby, it's like, well, hey, don't bother to ever call us next time. And says that Bobby just has a vivid imagination. And the officers go on to say that they're going to cancel the call and that they had been wasted their time by Bobby. The two officers leave. So we have Bobby going on to make his way back to his manager, explaining uh, that he had called the cops on said certain room, and it's curious if the manager knows anything about his neighbors that live next to him. It seems, of course, that the manager had probably moved in 2 seconds ago, so he doesn't even know probably who even Bobby is at this point. Maybe this guy has Alzheimer's or some kind of something, and he has a really poor memory. Who knows? But anyways, so so the manager goes on and talks about how uh, There had never been a person living in 517 since the manager started working there, because he probably just lived there 2 seconds ago. Bobby goes on to explain that there's a girl, there's a kid, and there's a mom, and there's a guy who's a cop. And the dad abuses them all day, every day. And Bobby has seen them. And even the manager is to state that, like, well, look, well, I've walked each and every hall in the building, and I know every tenant that lives here, and just you and the guy in 512 live in your floor. I've never seen a girl or a family in 517. Now let me sleep. So, but this guy has probably lived here like a second ago, so we can't take his word for anything. Plus, this guy is coming up with any reason to not have any problems for himself. Plus, also, I'm sure he would love to get rid of uh, this ex-con anyways. So, we have Bobby that makes his way. Oh no! Wait. We have Bobby that makes his way through the streets as Alyssa is at her school, and it seems that she can't even concentrate. It seems that she is getting to hear every single noise, and she's to be irritated by it. She's overhearing a guy with his uh, ear earpieces in, or his earbuds in. Alyssa is getting annoyed by Katie, who is rattling her pencil on uh, her notes or her chapter, her book consistently. And then Alyssa is going on and seeing a hooded figure off in the distance that Alyssa's getting a little scared of, maybe. So Alyssa decides that she is just so distracted that she can't even do anything but just want to leave here. So Katie leaves with her. So Alyssa goes on and talks to Katie about it was her fault for why uh, Bobby had went to prison. She had gone on to state the two of them had went to a bar, and at one point there had been a guy that approached Alyssa and pushed her against the wall and was putting his hand over Alyssa's mouth. Bobby intervened and started beating the guy, but he went a little bit too far. He punched a little bit too hard, and eventually Bobby had killed that guy. And Kitty goes on and says, like, well, maybe since he had gone on to hurt that guy, maybe he'll go on and he'll hurt you. And Alyssa says, like, well, hey, he was only trying to help me. So yeah, so uh like maybe Alyssa just has to chalk it up as that just one time where Bobby had just went too far. Plus also every time that Alyssa cried, Bobby punched harder. Um and Katie tells Alyssa, it's like, well, hey, just be careful, okay? So Bobby goes on and is working underneath a car, and all of a sudden he is to go on and having this problem with hearing to the point there seems to be blood coming down his ears. We have at a point also where Bobby is to have oil leak all over his face, and he thinks it's blood. Bobby ends up from Hector being ripped from underneath the car, and Hector ends up asking Bobby is if there is a problem. Hector goes on and makes his way to the sink, and he mentions that he's bleeding from the ears. And Hector asks him, "Hey, are you okay? Do you think you need to go to the hospital?" And Bobby's like, "No, I just need to finish my shift." And Hector's like, "No, like, get your stuff straight away." Like, if anything, Hector mentions like, "Well, hey, after he left prison, like he needed like a sponsor and everything like that." So, like, if anything, like Hector is telling Bobby, it's like, "Hey, get yourself okay, and then come back." So Alyssa and Bobby are to meet up. Here is where Bobby goes on and tells Alyssa that he thinks that he's being driven crazy like his mother was. And Alyssa goes on to tell Bobby, "Hey, your mother was sick. She wasn't crazy." Uh, and Bobby's like, "Well, something made her crazy." Bobby is to almost also be tempted to be leaving the apartment or leaving town or whatever, because he's trying to figure out a way to separate himself from that place, from consistently hearing these people having this abuse, and there's nothing that Bobby can do about it. Even to the point to where even if he calls the police, nothing's going to happen from that. So, but if anything, Alyssa is to also mention how Bobby leaving his mother kind of made her depressed, feeling like Bobby had deserted her. Uh, like also, Bobby had deserted a lot of people in his life. Looking at Alyssa, so all of a sudden the manager is to poke his head out and be like, "Hey, you got some tables." And so Alyssa's like, "Well, hey, I gotta go back to work." It seems like the natural where like Glenn Close is like, "Well, hey, I gotta go," and she keeps seeing that throughout the entire movie. It's kind of Alyssa with like her "I gotta go." So now we have Joseph. He's going on and he's seemingly overhearing, I'm sure, his neighbors going at it. His neighbors that keep going on and having this domestic dispute that no one can dispute it to get rid of it, to have it stop happening. Because it's just going to keep going on and on and on. Joseph goes on to seemingly chop up his fingers as he's to think that he's to be chopping up cucumbers and tomatoes. We would then uh, have Joseph at first look like he's chopping up his fingers, but then we'd find out otherwise, that it's just some illusion that only he can see. Joseph then goes on to be freaked out because he looked like he chopped his fingers, but then his hand is fine. And then he goes on to throw all of the cucumbers and everything that he had just chopped up away in this trash, and he's going to go and throw it into the trash chute. He'll come to find that there is some hands that are to be preventing uh, Joseph from being able to throw his trash away, and they'll be coming to grab him and trying to put him down the chute also. Joseph obviously gets freaked out, leaves that garbage chute area, makes his way back to his place, goes on to poke his head out his door in the peephole to find that Gina is to have made her way to his peephole and looks very disheveled and very dead, zombified like. So Gina goes on and tells Joseph to open the door, "Please. I know you're there." Joseph goes on and does none of the sort because he's freaked out by all this. Joseph tries to go on and find out that Gina is going to be popping up from behind him. And so Joseph then rushes to his own bathroom, hoping that that is to be his only saving grace, to come to find out that Carly, who's to be little child, is to be popping from out of the shower and be like, "Hey, drop the soap." Joseph ends up freaking out from this girl who is to appear in his shower, obviously, so Joseph is to hope that he can probably make his way into opening this door, but it seems that it won't open. Joseph starts to scratch his door as this girl is to be clinging to his leg, and so more than likely Joseph is to probably get scared to death and is to have died here. Or had a heart attack, one or the other, I don't know. But if anything, Joseph is to be dead either way. And so the next thing we see is Bobby sleeping in his bed, getting little driblets of blood coming on his face. It's a good old time at the Bobby house. So we all of a sudden see, I believe, Gina, who's appearing on the ceiling, and she is just all like blacky eyed and bloody faced. Is like, hey, I'm here on your ceiling, just having a good time, just having a good old time. So Bobby goes on and wakes up from his bloody, horrific experience to just be really, at this point, just so upset that he is breaking all kinds of furniture in his entire place. He's busting up this wall. He's like, what do you want? What do you want from me? So, after that good old bashing and thrashing of furniture and all kinds of things, Bobby goes on and makes his way to open his door, to come to find that there's a detective there that wants to ask him a couple of questions about Joseph Wright, his neighbor. We would go on to have Bobby, that is, to explain that he had gone on and been with Alyssa, and more than likely not have been able to have murdered his neighbor Walter. But anyways, uh, the detective is to go on and possibly have maybe more questions that he's going to probably ask Bobby later, or probably going to go on and ask the manager. But either way, Bobby makes his way down the hallway to see uh, Joseph's corpse, all like, oh, and all grotesque like, as the detective and the manager to close the door for Bobby to not be able to see what's going on. So Bobby goes on and makes his way into the repair shop, or the garage shop, whatever that is, the car repair place, whatever that means. So Bobby makes his way to his work, and Hector goes on and tells him, "Hey, you're an hour late." And Bobby apologizes, but hey, like, his building is going through some things. So Hector goes on and tells Bobby that they need to talk, that it seems that one of the cars has gone missing, and guess who he's gonna blame? The new guy. It's like, well, hey, all these other guys that have been here, I've been trusting them, they've been here for too long, so you're the new guy, so I assume if this car doesn't show up, then you don't have a job. Bobby goes on and says, hey, I didn't steal any car, but if anyways, I guess if you don't believe me, then F it, like, I'm just gonna leave then. Because Hector's like, well, hey, if the car shows up, you'll have a job, but if the car doesn't show up, then you won't have a job. So Bobby goes on and he just decides to, like, well, F it, then I'm just gonna leave because you won't want to have me work here. So I'm bouncing. Now we go on to Alyssa. She's at her school going on and putting dresses on mannequins, trying to do some kind of schooling, but she'll come to find there is a bit of noises start, or ruckuses that start to be happening around her, that lead Alyssa to start to get spooked, obviously. We even get to a point where Alyssa is to see her mannequin uh, appear to her as a ghost, where she kind of flips the mannequin and it has this very uh, ghost like face of, I believe, either the child or the mother, and instead then appears as the mannequin. And Alyssa's like, man, like, so, like, I smoked the wrong juice that day, or I took the long puff that day, you know what I mean? But anyways, I don't know, I'm just saying whatever. So we have Hector that goes on to find out that the car that had gotten jacked was to have just been one that had gotten impounded, and it was the wrong one or something along those lines. So either way, the car that had been supposedly stolen had just been misplaced. So the car reappears. Hector is to go on and realize that Bobby was not at fault whatsoever with the occurrence of this car being gone. That it was just a mistake. So Hector is to go on and tell one of his employees to watch the shop, because Bobby is going to, or Hector is going to personally go to Bobby's place to say, hey man, you have a job here? Like, if anything, yeah, like, I'm sorry about this mistake. So, and Hector will go on and explain said mistake. Here is where Alyssa goes and makes her way to the bathroom because she needs to take a dump after the poop scare that she had here. So we have Alyssa that goes on to make her way to the bathroom stall, and there seems to be some very blackened like feet that are walking their way uh, past Alyssa's stall. Alyssa will go on and be ever so frightened by the feat that she is to go on and see, but here is what ends up becoming a lot more worse. We go on to have bloody fingertips that are to make their way on to Alyssa's nearby stall, and there seems to be a head protruding from said side bathroom stall, which is probably horrify Alyssa even more. Here's really a true story that connects to me. So there had been one day where I'd gone to a bathroom stall because I needed to take uh, a, a time to myself in said area, and there had been a kid that decided that they were not only going to go into a bathroom stall, but they decided to poke their head out from their bathroom stall into mine, and I'm like, "Excuse me," I was like occupied, and like, "Oh," and then they just dropped. I'm like, "What the?" I'm like, it's like, I'm sorry. It's like I'm sorry if I'm using a bathroom stall. Um, anyways, this stupid, just people do stupid things. Anyways, so Kitty goes on and meets with Alyssa here, and or one of the girls meet with Alyssa and ask her if she's okay. Bobby is to go on and try to make his way to the classroom, trying to find Alyssa. We go on to find that Bobby's to meet up with Alyssa's best friend, and Bobby goes on to ask Alyssa if she knows her, and the further and further the conversation that she has doesn't really show her hand that she knows who Alyssa is. But Bobby's like, well, hey, I'm gonna find Alyssa, and I'm gonna need you to help me. Bizarrely, uh, because Katie will go on and tell Bobby to like leave her alone, and I guess that's a good enough indication that she knows who she is. Also, Katie goes on and tells Bobby about the other girl, and Bobby's like, well, what other girl? The woman at your apartment. It's like, uh, and still Bobby is very confused. Did Alyssa talk to her? And Katie's like, well, don't know. Uh, so Bobby ends up telling Katie, it's like, well, hey, just have her call me, and then he leaves. Here's where Hector makes his way to Bobby's peephole. Here's where Hector goes on and explains that the wrong car had gotten towed away, and Hector is to explain to Bobby that he's sorry he doubted him, and if anything, his job will be available to him uh, whenever he wants it. Uh, Hector goes on and leaves, goes in the elevator, and he finds that there's a kid there that's hitting all the buttons. Hector doesn't have any problem with this, and the further and further that Hector does go on and start to inspect this girl, the more he's kind of worried about her, just the way she looks, asking her if she's okay. Hector then goes on to find this girl is running down this hallway, so Hector decides to follow her, saying hello, little girl, are you alright? And continues to make his way to follow where this girl is. Hector will make his way to the place where the dumpster is and will find this girl's body in the dumpster. Hector will freak out. He'll start to scream help. He'll scream anybody. The dumpster girl gets out of the dumpster and eventually will find Hector. Eventually, Hector will go on to be freaking out, make his way up the stairs. He'll find Gina, the ghost of Gina. Gina's ghost will freak him out. Hector will fall down these stairs and he will be killed. Uh, Bobby ends up getting a call from his parole officer, telling him that this is his weekly check-in, that he needs to go on and make this appointment because if he doesn't, he'll go back to jail. So Bobby goes on and tells his parole officer that he can't talk right now, and his parole officer tells him like, "Well, I'll give you this in vivid detail. Um, like, if you don't go on, you make your way to this appointment, you'd be in violation." And it's like, "Hey, you get me? So you need to." He needs to go on and be there because it's Tuesday. So Bobby goes on and decides that he's probably going to end up going right back to prison. So he's probably going to make, or he's probably going to have to go on and just escape wherever he is. So Bobby goes on and is to start be rummaging through his mother's stuff. He's trying to find his mother's necklace. He goes on to find that the necklace is underneath the bed, so he grabs it. Bobby uh, ends up hearing the help me. Uh, Please open the door. So we have Bobby who goes on to start leaving the room, but then all of a sudden is to see the little girl's appearance hopping on his bed. And Bobby is to then get a phone call from Melissa. But I think it just goes straight to voicemail. Alyssa goes on of like, "Hey Bobby, can you hear me? Those noises that you hear, I think I might be hearing them too. Uh, you were trying to tell me something, and I didn't listen, and I'm sorry. And I'm going to come and find you, okay?" Bobby goes on, and he is to, of course, make his way uh, to the neighbor to get the backstory about the neighbors that he finds out are dead. So Bobby goes on and talks to the old man, and he ends up getting the backstory. So we come to find that this officer had gone on to kill his wife and daughter, and then turned a gun on himself. It seems he had gone on to beat his wife with his billy club, and then took a bullet to his own face. Um, Bobby goes on to tell this old man, it's like, "Well, hey, why didn't you go on and you say anything, or even my mother say anything?" Like, nobody spoke, and that's the real reason why that these people are just haunting this place. Um, like, you guys could have even just called the cops, but you couldn't even be bothered to do that either. So they chalk it up to like, well, it's a terrible thing that happens to a city like this every day, and some of us just don't care. Uh, Supposedly the next morning they were all found dead, and so we have Bobby that chalks it up to it's the fault of everybody who worked or who lived here that did nothing and said nothing, even my mother included. And Bobby tells his neighbor that they could have saved them. Uh, so the neighbor eventually gets more and more annoyed with Bobby, closes the door on him, and so Bobby has nothing better to do but then to just leave and make his way back to his own place. Alyssa makes her way to Bobby's place, and then is to all of a sudden uh, overhear 517. Alyssa goes to the 517 door and says, "Hello, miss. Like, I really need to find him. I really need to find Bobby." The door opens. Alyssa makes her way in. Alyssa ends up asking if anyone's home. "Sorry, the woman who walked in here, do you?" And here is where the door closes. Alyssa starts going on and getting attacked by a ghost. She ends up getting throttled and thrusted around all over the goddamn place. She ends up losing some nails. She ends up going on and she ends up getting beaten up by a billy club because, again, uh, this is where Walter is to seemingly be going on and be doing this to his wife. So he's kind of repeating this on a girl that looks somewhat like her. Uh, there was also the really, I guess, scary moment where when Alyssa is to go on and like start to ask if anybody's in the apartment, then she goes back out the apartment. She kind of pokes her head out, and then Walter grabs her and sucks her back in. And here's where he starts uh, uh, ghostly, just kind of knocking her all over the place. And then her eyes end up getting swollen, and she ends up even going on the ceiling, and then she falls down. Bobby makes his way back to his place as, again, Alyssa is consistently getting her arms kind of thrusted to the wall, and so on and so forth. All kinds of horrific things, sadly enough. So Walter is to go on. Walter is to go on and be uh, seen with Alyssa. Or no, wait. I got that wrong. Um, Bobby's to go on and overhear Alyssa in the other room in 517. So Bobby goes on to investigate, gets into the room, grabs Alyssa, brings her to his couch, and tries as best as he can to take care of her. And he calls 911 and he calls for an ambulance. So here is where Gina and Carly are in the hallway, and it seems that Gina was going to try to leave Walter. She had gotten her luggage out, she was leaving his ass. So good for her. So Gina is trying to tell Carly to smile and to be happy, even though of course they're leaving Walter. Freaking shit. Here is where we go on to have Walter, who is seemingly coming back after a day of being a kappa because he has his uniform on. So Walter walks into the hallway and realizes that Gina has luggage there. I'm like, well, why are you leaving? And Gina goes on and shows Walter the bruises and her arm just full of just pain and anguish, what have you. So both Bobby and Alyssa are, of course, in the living room, and they're mostly going on and they're trying to listen to what's going on outside. So Walter does not want Gina and Carly to leave, obviously. And Walter doesn't even think that he had been the one to have hurt either Gina or uh, his daughter. And like, or maybe he has no real recollection of anything of it happened. Um, and he goes on to even ask Carly if she is okay. And also, uh, Walter is just confused why, again, his wife is trying to leave him. Uh, or, or how any of the bruises on this girl's body had even happened. Like maybe Walter was getting a memory loss of some kind. Who knows? Maybe he had been hit on the head too often. I don't know. I don't know why exactly Walter doesn't know what all is going on. Um, but anyways, uh, the further and further the confusion plays in with Walter, we also go on and see that Walter, the more and more confused he's getting, also the more upset he's getting. So when Walter is getting angry, more than likely that is probably also the contributing factor of his family ending up getting hurt. So Walter just wants his wife to just tell him he loves him, but that's not really going to happen. So if anything, Gina is to try to escape Walter, and Walter gets the little club thing out, uh, little stick out. He'll go on to whop uh, Gina on the back of the head, and that'll get her to bleed out the ears. So Bobby going on and bleeding out the ears is connected to actually Gina. So I thought that was kind of interesting to kind of see like, oh, the weird thing of it is though, is that when Gina is on the ground, we see blood coming from her ears. Then Gina stands up, there's no blood, and then there is blood. Makes no sense. Bobby gets close to the door and is overhearing this argument. So Bobby finally pokes his head out the door and says, "Hey, you gotta stop! You gotta stop this!" And Walter then turns to Bobby and says, "Hey, mind your own business." And Bobby is to confidently just like, "Well, no, like you've gotta stop." So here's where the tables are to turn here. We get to a point where Gina then goes on and is uh, to take the stick away from Walter, and she goes on to start beating him to death. Finally, stopping this whole cycle of things, and this is how things are to finally get resolved. It seems, uh, and oh no, no, wait, what happens here? So yeah, so Gina goes on, and while Walter's back is turned to uh, to Bobby, here is where Gina comes in and does the swipe. Bobby falls over, and as Bobby starts to just kind of get away from his wife, Gina goes on and continues on her striking path, and that's when she does him in and kills him. Alyssa is to be sliding ever so close from the couch to try to make her way to the peephole so she can see what's going on and hoping that Bobby's going to be okay out there. Uh, and plus, also for her to be another witness of what's going on. Uh, After Gina goes on and beats her ghostly husband to death, she then turns to Bobby and then turns back to her daughter, and eventually all of the ghosts effing disappear. Alyssa goes and looks at the peephole to see that only Bobby is there and no one else. Bobby is to then make his way back into the room looking for Alyssa, and is to take her to the couch, and then similarly after that credits are rolling because there's just scenery shots, and that is to be it. I'm gonna get the heck out of here. I think this movie was an hour and a half. I spent way too much time talking about this, but logically, I guess I'll have another thing to review. I'll have an upload, so that's good for me. Thank you for going on and deciding however you are going to decide to watch this. I would go on to say that I wish that I could have found something better for today. Um, but I'm trying to just keep doing these videos. So um, at some point, I know I will not go on and find every single one of these projects to be the best as ever, and I'm not just gonna go on and just do everything that I can thumbs up, because logically at some point people will want to go on and find out about a movie that probably no one is to go on to review and see if it's worth their time or not. So maybe this will just end up being one of those where people just go on and find this review because no one else is talking about it. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't really done my YouTube research, but every time I've ever gone on and seen reviews of certain projects, like it's getting very, very much more thin about how many people have gone on to review certain things. So I'm like, okay, that tells me like how rare this movie is. Because oftentimes when I'd always go and do my research, there'd be like quite a few numbers of people would go on to review a certain movie. So I'm like, ah, well, like I guess I never found that narrow gap of somebody not reviewing something. But it is kind of surprising how I'll go on and I'll have done like the movie The Guilty, and only one person reviewed that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm starting to narrow down like that I can just get to these niche things. That rare amount of people have reviewed it, but again, like that probably isn't even a good thing either. But anyways, I'm gonna get the heck out of here before I put my foot further into my mouth, because I tend to do that way too often. Um, but anyways, yeah. Uh, hopefully this will be a thing that someone will see. I hope so. Um, I'm starting to see that um, things are also really uh, trickling down as far as views are to be concerned. Um, but also, like, it's been a very uh, long time for me to go on and have uh, like videos that are to be thousands of or 8,000 of view. So I'm grateful and I'm appreciative of everyone taking that time. And hopefully, I will go on and somehow figure out a way to uh, to make better videos in the future. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.